All right, everyone. We are back for episode 58 of Stub Luv Live. And I'm excited. I get excited to do each and every one of these episodes, but sometimes I get kind of really excited. And I'm really excited to have Simeon Lipman on. I see Simeon's joined. Let me get him on. Everyone hearing me? I say you can.
Hey,
Can you
hey,
hear me?
I can hear you.
Wait a second. They say they can't hear me. Oh, goodness. Can y'all hear me now?
I can hear you.
I can hear you. There's good now, good now. Okay. All right. So we're in. All right, so this is episode 58 of Stub Luv Live, and I'm excited. We have Simeon Lipman on. And I was just saying, Simeon, I get excited when I do each one of these episodes, but I get kind of really, really excited when I get like a guest like you. So I'm really excited tonight. This is a big one for us.
Hey, man, thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because I don't really know you all that well, but we've been talking over the week, and I feel like I've gotten to know you really, better, and I just like talking to you. I mean, we can talk. We had a couple conversations, and it's like, man, I'm just talking to this guy like I've known him forever because you're just so passionate about collecting and so passionate about memorabilia and this stuff.
We speak the same language. You know what I mean?
We do. So you were kind enough to come on. I actually watched an episode of you being on Leighton Sheldon's show. Thought the episode was phenomenal. I love Leighton. I think he does a great job on his show. I thought you were one of his best guests. I know you're a ticket collector because I follow you on IG. So I was like, look, I've got to get Simeon on, and you were gracious enough to do that. So give us, I mean, a lot of people that are going to watch this may not know your background, but when your background includes, Antiques Roadshow, Christie's, Leland's, Mastro, that's pretty damn impressive. So give us some background.
Well, I've been doing this my whole life, like you. And I was just very fortunate. When I was a young man in college, I was thinking about going into law, admiralty law. I kind of got bored with that pretty quickly, and I was like, this isn't for me. I thought maybe art is something I'm very interested in, and I ended up getting an internship at Christie's. This is in the early '90s, and at the time they had just started a new department, Collectibles, and I had been doing this kind of stuff my whole life, right? So they asked me, "Would you like to be part of this department?" I said, "Sure." So that's kind of how I got in, and I've been in it ever since. I've been very fortunate. I've been around the block. I've been, I know where all the bodies are buried. You know what I mean?
So, I kind of wish someone maybe would have said that to me. I'm a practicing lawyer. Now, I don't do admiralty law, but, if someone told me I could be doing what you're doing all day, and I love the practice of law or practicing law, I would definitely choose what you guys are doing, you and Leighton, each and every day, because you guys are literally like professional treasure hunters, and it's amazing.
Yeah, no, there's definitely an aspect to it, and like you were saying, like the road show, which is something I started doing in 1997, which is nuts to me.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, that's literally, like a treasure hunt, and you never know what's going to show up. And I'm actually going next week. I have a road show next week, so I'm still doing it, and it's so much fun. And when we started doing this, there was no, barely an internet. There was no eBay. You know. But even now, with all that, you'd be shocked at what shows up. I mean, I am, so.
Yeah, I mean, I still try to watch it, and I still grab episodes here and there if I can on YouTube. I even watched a few of the episodes that you were on for preparation on this show, and it's just kind of crazy that people bring you, the kinds of cards that they do and game used material and just wild stuff. It's kind of funny. I pulled this. I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. I pulled this off the internet. A young Simeon Lipman on Antiques Roadshow with Lara Spencer. I mean,
That's
it
right.
doesn't get any better than that, Simeon.
Yeah, I'll tell you how long ago that was. I was showing what graded cards looked like because people had not seen them before. That
Wow.
was at the very early, beginning of graded cards. So I did a little segment on that.
That's pretty cool. So I know that you're passionate about a lot of things: pop culture, art, sports. So you collect in a lot of different genres.
Mhm.
One of the things that I heard you say on Leighton's show, and it really kind of struck a chord with me, was you like doing what you're doing because you're kind of touching history.
Yeah.
Um, Tell us a little bit about what you mean behind those words.
Well, I mean, look, ticket collecting for me has always been very special because I really feel that when you're holding a ticket, especially one that's been used, I love stubs.
Okay.
I mean, full tickets are awesome, but a full ticket wasn't necessarily there.
It's
I
true.
love that. I love that a stub was there. That the DNA of that moment is in that stub. Do you know what I mean?
I
And
do.
that to me is like the closest thing to time travel there is. And so, like years and years ago, I started thinking about ticket collecting. I was always interested in it, and I would think like, what would be a really, a great ticket to have to some event or to see something, and so like early on, I started to do that, and we've spoken how pre-internet it was really hard to do that. It's gotten a little easier since.
Yeah. I think you also were talking a little bit with Leighton too about the fact that you love, and we talked about it as well. You love the research component to it.
Oh
You
yeah.
love to be able to find, the idea behind, hey, I'd like to get this actor's Broadway debut, or the first time this actor was ever on stage in some kind of,
Mhm.
meaningful production. I'm going to research it, and then I'm going to go ahead and take whatever steps I need to try to find it and put myself in a position to potentially locate, this diamond in the rough. And you've done that on some occasions where, you've thought about events that maybe other people haven't. And I'm going to give you, the floor to be able to talk about some of those. But, going into playbills from old Broadway shows and finding ticket stubs stapled into the playbill and, have found pretty much gold in doing that.
Oh
So
yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so look, I love pop culture in general. I'm a big sports fan, obviously, but I love acting. I love actors and actresses. So when I started thinking about tickets, and I was thinking, what's like a rookie ticket for an actor? Like how does that translate? Well, a lot of actors and actresses started out on Broadway and they started out very young, So, when I started thinking about this, I'm like, who are the actors I really, admire? I love Marlon Brando, right? So Marlon Brando to me is one of the greatest actors of all time, maybe the greatest actor of all time, right? So he had a really great career before doing movies on stage. I had no idea that he was only 20 years old when he started, but he was only 20 years old, and he was just out of Omaha, Nebraska. He showed up in New York, and he got a part in a play, and I started researching this play, and it was called I Remember Mama. And on opening night, it was October 19th, 1944. 1944. Think about that. The Godfather's 1972. So, I mean, you see how far early, you know. And lo and behold, you know, I started looking and I found this ticket, which to me is just the greatest ticket. I love this thing. I mean, we talked about it, but I
Yeah.
just love it. So this is the opening night ticket to this play, and it's the very first time Marlon Brando took the Broadway stage. He's 20 years old. So, like something like that to me, like here, you're talking about touching history. Yeah, there it is. You're talking about touching history. I mean, that's history right there, you know? Now you figure also a Broadway venue like that has a few hundred seats at the
Yep.
most.
Yep.
What I found doing this and going through, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of listings and playbills and things like that. People keep playbills. People kept playbills. Tickets, not so much. Why? Because when they're leaving the venue, the ticket they had in the playbill falls out, right? So you figure at least 75% of them are gone at that moment, you know? Now, who are the few who take the ticket stub and attach it to the playbill for posterity? I mean, an infinitesimally small amount, right? And it goes on like that. Now, when you're talking about specific nights, okay, now it's like, so you know, it gets to a very tiny little infinitesimally small fraction of a possibility. And if you can find that, I think it's very special.
Yes, I completely agree. And I'm blown away by that Marlon Brando ticket. I mean, to think that you were able to acquire that, that you were able to put that in your head, think that you were going to put yourself out there, challenge yourself, and you conquer it, you find it. I mean, to think, Simeon, what you just said. You know, it's funny, people are saying you're speaking my language. I mean, these ticket collectors, I agree. You know, you're going through all of the research to even locate something like that. And then to find the opening night from 1944, where there was probably, like you said, only a few hundred people in attendance, how many people kept it? And then how many could possibly be uncovered? And you
Right.
know what, Simeon? I think the answer is that's it.
It might be it. Yeah. I mean, I've been looking for more. I haven't found, you know, but you do, if you do keep your eyes open, you know, I found, like, for instance, I found his fifth uh, appearance, right? Literally a few days later, you know, and I found one a couple months later. So, and that's another thing that I've discovered too, with actors and actresses on Broadway and in plays. It's their debut. It's a little different than with sports debuts, right? Their debut is generally considered their first production. Is their debut. That's like the nomenclature of the theater, right? Their debut opening night obviously is the first night. You know, that's their first at bat, right? But what's interesting, like, you know, for instance, here's an interesting one. So I've been looking for this forever. I love Steve McQueen, right? I love Steve McQueen. So Steve McQueen, also young kid, like in his early 20s, he started on Broadway. He traveled around the country. He was in this play, what's it called? Time Out for Ginger. I looked for years and years. This ticket. Now again, this is the first day he did it, but he literally was in this play for a month in 1956. You know, I mean, and that's, to me, that's like, that's just as good. You know, to me, that it's so amazing that that exists. So
I agree. I agree. That's crazy.
1953, excuse me, 1953.
Unreal.
See, that's the thing. It's like these guys are in the minor leagues almost. You know what I
Right.
mean?
It's true. It really is true. It's kind of like I've seen collectors that have tickets to games that Wilt Chamberlain played at Overbrook High School in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, like, how does that exist?
Yeah.
Like, how was someone smart enough to hold on to that ticket?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's kind of like you said, it's almost like minor leagues. This is before they even got into movies or,
Yeah.
in places on TV where we would see them. And you know what? You've got a great collection of this stuff. I mean, I went on your IG page, you've got, Gene Hackman. Uh, you know, it, uh, it doesn't stop. It's James Caan.
Here we
I
go.
mean, I mean, this one was great. This was like Neil Simon's first
Oh yeah, I
play.
love that, man. That's a crazy ticket. Okay, so listen to this one, right? So I'm like thinking, I'm like, who are the great writers? So I'm looking, Mel Brooks, Neil Simon. I love comedy and stuff. So I start doing the research, right? And you find out that the very first thing Neil Simon ever did as like a 21-year-old kid, he did it with his brother. He did like a skit in a bigger play called To Catch a Rising Star or something like that, 1952. That's the opening night ticket. So that's the very first night that anything of Neil Simon, one of the most important, Broadway writers, producers in history, that's that night, his first appearance, if you will.
It's
So
it's
cool.
it's very, very, very cool.
Yeah.
And again, I went on and I mean, like, it's just wild. A pass to a fair that showcased Apple computers back in the 70s and the 80s, where
Yeah.
Steve Jobs shows up to talk about Apple products.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, who would even think, Simeon, to look for this, let alone other than you, and then let alone find one?
Yeah, I mean that's something I was looking for literally for like 30 years. I knew that there was something called the West Coast Computer Fair. That's where Jobs and Wozniak showed off the Apple One, and then eventually the Apple Two. That was where Bill Gates and Paul Allen displayed their basic program for their new company, Microsoft. So, I mean, I knew that at this little convention, these titans are there, but they're rookies, right? And I looked for years for something. And I finally found a collection. I have one of them here. This is a pass from 1978. This is the second one, the second computer fair. Okay, and this is they showed the Apple One at this computer fair. Jobs and Wozniak. If you had this pass, okay, you walked into that event. You could have walked right up to Steve Jobs and bought an Apple One from him personally. Crazy, right?
Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, this I found in a collection. This guy, his name was Charles Stevenson. He was the professor of computer science at UC Berkeley, and he kept everything. And he kept this.
Wild. It's
Crazy.
wild. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I'm kind of feeding off of your passion, Simeon, because it's great stuff, and I love it. I wanted to talk to you a little bit. You've had some interesting kind of forays into tickets through your work with the different auction houses over the years, and you kind of told me a story when we were talking this week, and it kind of blew me away. Rumble in the Jungle tickets, and I think you've got to share that story with the people
Yeah.
who are gonna watch this, because it just I was I was
Well,
just so I mean, I was
yeah,
enthralled with it.
I mean, I put together back in '97 the Muhammad Ali auction at Christie's, which was like this definitive auction. and it had all the tickets, all the programs, all the site tickets, all that stuff, site posters. So I had a passion for all these stuff. I've had a passion for all these stuff since I was a kid. Obviously, the Rumble in the Jungle ticket is, one of the Grail tickets. It was in Zaire. How many people were possibly there, right? Who brought it back, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm at the Antiques Roadshow, and this older guy comes over, and he's got a little envelope. He opens up the envelope. He takes out 2 dead mint full site tickets to Rumble in the Jungle, the green and yellow ones. The big,
Not proof tickets.
no, not
These
proof,
are real deal seats.
all real tickets, right? And I'm just like, wow, tell me the story. So he and his wife worked for like the Peace Corps, okay? They were in Zaire. He bought tickets to the fight for he and his wife. Well, what people might remember is that fight was postponed by 2 months because Foreman like broke his wrist or something like that, or maybe a month, but it was postponed. Well, he and his wife had to go back to the States. So what did he do? He couldn't get a refund for the tickets, so he just took them back with him. And they've been there forever, right? And these 2 dead mint full tickets. And I told him, I was like, these are unbelievable.
Yeah.
So great.
I can only imagine, Simeon, what those would bring in an auction now, because benign kind of conditioned stubs are bringing, 18, 20, 22,000.
Oh, yeah.
And every auction, I see one go up and I'm like, okay, well, there's another one going up. It's got to go for less, and it goes for more. So, if you have 2 full Rumble in the Jungle tickets, boy, I don't know what those do. In
There's the original envelope.
with the original envelope too. Yeah, I mean, even that makes it cooler, right?
It's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So then also, we discussed a little bit too about, your love at some point for Mike Tyson. I had the same love for Mike Tyson. Grew up on boxing, but Tyson was big. Finding Tyson tickets to some of his later fights are not that hard. Finding the fights at the Trump venues and the Trump arenas, not really all that difficult. But finding tickets to Tyson fights from the early ages, from the early fights, really next to impossible. And I think, Simeon, you were fortunate enough to acquire some of those, and then maybe had the misfortune of getting rid of them too early, right?
Yeah. I you know what? I had this amazing ticket collection of Tyson stuff. I mean, it was unbelievable. A lot of it had been like one of his management team. So, I mean, it was like stuff from early, like, at the Civic Center in Albany, like stuff like that. It was like super early stuff. But when we talked, you mentioned one of my favorite ones, which is the Mitch Blood Green MSG ticket, which impossible, right? And you have that.
I do. I have it. I was lucky enough to find it. I've never seen one, and I always really wanted it. So for me, it's been kind of a huge find. I've thought a lot about, and I was just in New York and I forgot about it. But the next time I'm in New York, I hear Mitch Green is still training fighters in Brooklyn somewhere. So as long as I feel safe enough to do it, I'm going to run out there and see if maybe I can crack the ticket and get him to sign it. But it's kind of one of those things, Simeon, you're in a place because of what you do where you see so many amazing things come past your desk and have over the years. Honus Wagner cards that are authentic, and, you've been able to find a place in auctions for those. Memorabilia, letters, communications, bats from Shoeless Joe Jackson. I mean, and the list goes on and on and on. Do you have any kind of regrets from being in it for so long to say to yourself, hey, maybe I should have put some of my money in those auctions and been the winning bidder?
Oh man, look, so beginning in the early 2000s, people asked me that question: what should I be buying? What should I be buying? And I kept telling everybody, Jordan stuff. Buy Jordan stuff, because that whole generation who loved Jordan, eventually they're going to come of age and they're going to want Jordan stuff. And I never ever took my own advice.
Yeah.
I hated Jordan. I couldn't stand him, and I just couldn't do it. And boy, I wish I had.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny. I've heard you talk too on this, and I think it's actually, really kind of sage advice and wisdom that you're passing on here. Because if you think about it, I think you've talked about it in terms of generational gaps. I actually wrote it down. Generational lag, and there's a collector's generational lag.
Yeah.
So right now, I think people who are your age, my age, who followed, the Don Mattingleys and the Ken Griffeys and the Frank Thomases and the Darryl Strawberries, all of a sudden, those things may not have been so popular some years ago because maybe our generation didn't have the money to put into, tickets and memorabilia. But now that we've got maybe a little bit of extra money to spend on that stuff, the pieces from that era are becoming incredibly popular. And I think what you've said, Simeon, is if you could kind of think about it in the future, like what's the next thing to hit?
Mhm.
Like what's the next big thing? What's your thoughts? I mean, what is it?
That's hard to say now because things have changed a lot. Collecting has changed a lot. We're in a time now where you see 12-year-old kids with the Pelican cases, with $100,000 worth of cards in them. That's not collecting in the future. That's
Right.
something else. I think a lot of the online stuff is interesting. A lot of the video game stuff is interesting. That seems to be more of interest to the younger generation. I know my kids, that's all they really care about. They're not, they're not into Pokemon. They're not in like the other generation is, but more almost online stuff. And I've always wondered if certain downloadable content that's unique and specific, if something like that will have a collectible value in the future, almost like, it's non-fungible, it's like Bitcoin. But like a special sword you used in a certain game or something like that. I think that might have collectible value in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think you also said something too, and I thought it was actually, very smart as well. If you kind of think about it, like I'm a kid growing up and I collected this, or I was into this. I loved Mike Tyson's Punch Out. I played it all the time. I loved NBA Jam. So, it's one of those things where you're like, well, if I get one of these sealed copies of the game, or I get one of the games, maybe it's not sealed, but it's in really tip-top shape and it's got the box, and I collect it now. I go ahead and I buy one, or I buy a couple of these things. The idea behind it is, well, you know what? It may have some significant increase in value in the future, and it may not. But the good thing about it, Simeon, is if it doesn't take off, that's okay because I love it. It has a connection to me.
That is why, and I always say this, and most, people who have been in this a long time, to collect what you love, because you don't know. There is no guarantee, right? I can tell you, when I started at Christie's years and years ago, vintage Hollywood stuff, like Gone with the Wind and, Mrs. Miniver and, stuff nobody cares about now, was the hottest stuff, right? I mean, now look, obviously, Wizard of Oz stuff, that transcends those things,
Yes.
but the majority of that vintage stuff that was so hot 30 years ago, the collectors are gone, and the next generations don't really care. And the value of that stuff has plummeted. So if you love that, that's great because now you can buy that stuff cheap. But it wasn't a great investment. So yeah, only buy what you love and enjoy it, and maybe something great comes out of it. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's pretty sound advice. So we have something on the show called the Gauntlet I'm going to take you to the gauntlet in a minute. It's kind of like some back and forth, fast, questions, yes, nos, and you'll do that. I don't want to let you go. I try to keep these things to about 30 minutes because I want people to watch them, and people kind of like fall off after 30 minutes. So the Nationals coming up.
Yes.
And I think you've probably been to more nationals maybe than I have. I've been going, since the 10th national, but you've been to a lot. What are your thoughts on the national? What do you look for? What is Simeon Lipman, who's done so much in this world? What do you look for? Do you come away buying stuff from the national, or
Always.
just or just kind of seeing old friends and
Wait. Oh wait, no, I always end up with something. Look, it's so fun. Like I wear comfortable shoes, I wear breathable fabric, and I walk the shows, and I look at every booth, and I do I just kind of look at everything, and I'll do a couple rounds, and I'll see something, I'll remember it, I'll go back, I'll try and make a deal. Yeah, so yes, I totally enjoy that, and usually you can always find something interesting.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think blows me away, and it really did last year because it was the first trade night that I ever went to. One of the nights at the National, they had a ticket trade night. So it was kind of in the card trade night. So I got to go in there, and it's like there's a DJ, and there's all these guys with the Pelican cases, and everyone's walking around with these big money cards. And I thought it was really cool. The new stuff's not for me, and I know the new stuff's not really your forte either. Um, but at the same time, the new stuff is driving this hobby in some respects, and I think that's good. I think that's healthy.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, the new stuff is way out of my price range, the really good stuff. But you know what I do? I mean, I love cards. I was a co-founder of a trading card company called Gas that does pop culture cards. I love trading cards. I absolutely love trading cards. So I always like to see what's coming out and what's new and, the new gimmick, whatever, the chrome, the foil, the this, the that. So what I do is I try and pick up, like I'll find like the worst player I can find, right? The absolute most common guy. Maybe he's cool looking, or maybe it's on a cool uniform or whatever, and then I'll try and buy those really rare cards, the one-of-ones, the superfractors of these people, just so I have examples, because I find that really interesting. And that's a great thing to do at a national. You don't have to you don't have to have the top players to have enjoyment out of these new cards. I've found, I have a lot of shiny cards, and I love them. They're not worth anything.
But you love them.
I
It's kind of just one of those things. I mean, again, as a ticket collector who goes to the National, if it was only ticket collectors, there'd be 50 of us. So it's nice to be able to go and see everything else. I learn from other people. I love talking to other people. I want to know about Type 1 photographs. I want to know about game used material. I want to know about vintage autographs. I want to learn about cards. And I just want to be around it. I want to smell it. I want to breathe it. And I'm excited. I think someone said we're like 50 days or maybe even under 50 days away from being in Chicago. And I can't get to Chicago fast enough. I'm just ready to get there. So let's jump into the gauntlet. It's just a few questions. Some we ask on every show, and some are personalized to you. So we're going to go back and forth a little bit. Stub, I think you've answered this one already. Stub or full?
Stub.
Yeah, stub, of course. Yeah, I got it. PSA, Beckett, or no slab at all when it comes to your tickets?
No slab.
Yeah. It's funny, Simeon. I was talking to you about this a couple days ago. A lot of collectors that I talked to when I first got into this, they were like, I don't understand why anyone wants to put plastic on the stuff. I just want to have it loose and, be able to touch it and feel it and love it. And I was kind of more like, I want everything protected. And I still kind of am in that kind of camp. But I get where they're coming from. I get where guys like you are coming from. So, yeah, I think I'm either PSA or no slab.
I think for resale, if you want to ever resell it, and yes, keeping it, keeping it secure. Like here, this is my Ferris ticket. I've got this. Look, I totally. That keeps it safe. It's very, you can hold it, look at it, whatever. But for me personally, I I don't need it in plastic. I don't.
I got you.
I don't. I won't not have it in plastic, but I don't need it in plastic.
Keep that Ferris around because I'm going to get to it in a second. Debuts or moments?
I like debuts.
Okay. Okay. Hey, that's fine. We got a lot of that back and forth, and it took you a second to answer that question. In our hobby, we've got our debut collectors who don't really love moments, but they understand moments, and we've got big moment collectors who are like, I wouldn't collect a debut if you gave it to me, but we try to understand why debuts are important. I love them both. I love it all. A PSA 10 ticket, so a PSA graded 10, or a PSA Pop 1 ticket?
Oh, Pop One.
Yeah. The expert comes out, the rarity, of course, everyone wants. Yeah, yeah. All right, so Broadway debut tickets, and I think you're on to something with this Broadway stuff. Broadway debut tickets or concert debut tickets?
Broadway.
Yeah. I think you're on to something here. I think you are. Ferris Bueller, let's see that ticket that you have there. So that's Ferris's actual day off.
This is Ferris's day off. This is June 5th, 1985. Yeah,
That was the Cubs game that was playing on the TV when the principal sees or is looking for Ferris.
that's right. And what's so cool about this day, right? It's June. It's toward the end of the year. It's a Wednesday. It's a school day. I mean, they thought about that. They thought about that when they picked that day to show on the TV. So I think I find look when I think it was right around COVID starting. I thought about this and I was like, oh my God, I have to find one of these. I have to, and they're really hard to find because nobody would have. It was a loss, right? The Cubs lost. Nobody went to this game. It was a day, it was a day game. Nobody went to the game. Why would anybody hold on to this? And nobody knew it was Ferris Bueller's Day Off until like a few years ago. So, nobody put two and two together. So I think this is like amazing, like the intersection of sports and pop culture right here.
Yeah, I get it. I'm the same way. I'm the same way. So Ferris Bueller, the ticket that you have in your hand to the actual day off, or a ticket to when they were filming Ferris Bueller in the stands at Wrigley.
This all day long because it's like a fantasy ticket, but it's real, right? It's a fantasy ticket that's real. Look, the filming ticket's awesome, but it's in September. It has nothing to do with the actual Ferris Bueller's Day Off, other than that they filmed the movie there, right?
Yeah,
This is the fantasy right here, which is just so cool.
I think it's cool too. To be honest with you, Simeon, I have them both, and I've coveted both, and I love them both.
They're both
I'm just
great.
waiting for Matthew Broderick to do a signing because I love my ticket signed. I haven't seen him do one lately, but I'm with you. These are great tickets. I love the intersection. Next one, Steve Jobs, and I know you do debut magazines. So Steve Jobs signed debut magazine or Elon Musk signed debut magazine.
Jobs. All,
Jobs all day long.
all day long. That magazine is basically impossible to find. 1981 Inc. magazine, the magazine for small business, and it's his first cover. He's got a beard, He's got like a leather jacket. He's very cool looking. He looks like Ashton Kutcher in that movie. That's what he looks like.
What are those going for nowadays?
One recently sold for about $4,000.
Wow, not bad, not bad. I know you're a sports guy too, so Don Mattingly debut ticket or Darryl Strawberry debut ticket?
Don Mattingly, and that's a really tough ticket. That's a really tough ticket. I had his first at bat ticket, But remember, he like took over for a guy at the end of the game. It's
Yeah.
like September 11th, 1982. And he was like a ninth inning defensive replacement. So who the hell has that?
It's a great ticket.
Yeah.
I've tried to get one here and there, and I've always kind of missed, so it's a great one. The last one, your Brando Broadway debut ticket or a premiere ticket to the Godfather movie?
Oh, the Brando. Come on. Now, I like premieres. I like that stuff. But I mean, the rarity, just the impossibility of it, you know, the
I,
rookie of it, the early impossible. I love that ticket.
I do too. I do too. Well, Simeon, we've been going for 40 minutes. I could probably go for 400 minutes. I've seen people texting and putting messages up. Keep going. Don't stop. Uh, I really enjoyed talking to you over the few days here that we've talked. It's meant a lot to me. I hope we'll stay in communication.
Definitely.
I look forward. You're going to be in Chicago? I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hope I'll be able to see you out at the National. Like I said, we're about 40 something days away.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being a guest on Stub Love Live. I can't tell you how appreciative I am that you took some time and gave us this wealth, a little bit of the wealth of your knowledge.
Oh, please.
What do you
It's
mean?
my pleasure. And I have started to watch the show and I really enjoy it.
Well,
We'll
I
continue.
first thing we need to have Simeon back for another. We definitely will. Episode 58 of Stub Love Live with Simeon Lipman. That's a wrap. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Thank
Be
you.
well.